Good evening, everyone. Before we start with the evening chanting, there's two dedications here. And so this is one from Anagaraka Atsuko. It says, could you please dedicate this evening's chanting to a friend of mine, Yamasaki Tetsuhide, who has been lost in the Arctic Ocean since the 29th November last year whilst on expedition. So that's in the Arctic Ocean. May he and his family be peaceful wherever he is now. Thank you very much. And so, keeping those people in mind. And then there's a note from Phoebe. May I request that tonight's chanting be dedicated to my mother, Rebecca. She passed away 1 year ago today. So it's a very poignant day. So keeping people in mind. So.
This evening, I thought we would chant the fire stone, which is on page 25 of the light brown color chanting book. And
Amante si sabam ดามิโสตังอาดิตังสาดาอาดิตังโสตวิญญาณังอาดิตังโสตสัมปัสโสอาดิโตยัมปิดังโสตสัมปัสสะปัจจยะรูปาจติเวดายิตังสุขังวาดุขังวาอาดุขัมสุขังวาตัมปิอาดิตังเกนะอาดิตังอาดิตังราคะกินะโดสะกินะโมหะกินะอาดิตังจาติยาจารามรณะนะโสกิหิปาริเดเวหิดุเตหิโดมานะเสหิอุปายาเสหิอาดิตันติวดามิกานังอาดิตังกันตาอาดิตังกานาสัญญานังอาดิตังกานาสัมปัสโสอาดิโตยัมปิดังกานาสัมปัสสะปัจจยะอุปาจติเวดายิตังสุขังวาดุขังวาอาดุขัมสุขังวาตัมปิอาดิตังเกนะอาดิตังอาดิตังราคะกินะโดสะกินะโมหะกินะอาดิตังจาติยาจารามรณะนะโสเกหิปาริเดเวหิดุเตหิโดมานะเสหิอุปายาเสหิอาดิตันติวดามิจิวาอาดิตังรัสสะอาดิตังจีวาวิญญาณังอาดิตังจีวาสัมปัสโสอาดิโตยัมปิดังจีวาสัมปัสสะปัจจยะอุปาจติเวดายิตังสุขังวาดุขังวาอาดุขัมสุขังวาตัมปิอาดิตังเกนะอาดิตังอาดิตังราคะกินะโดสะกินะโมหะกินะอาดิตังจาติยาจารามรณะนะโสเกหิปาริเดเวหิดุเตหิโดมานะเสหิอุปายาเสหิอาดิตันติวดามิกายโยอาดิโตโพธาบาอาดิตังกายวิญญาณังอาดิตังกายสัมปัสโสอาดิโตยัมปิดังกายสัมปัสสะปัจจยะอุปาจติเวดายิตังสุขังวาดุขังวาอาดุขัมสุขังวาตัมปิอาดิตังเกนะอาดิตังอาดิตังราคะกินะโดสะกินะโมหะกินะอาดิตังจาติยาจารามรณะนะโสเกหิปาริเดเวหิดุเต sampasapacaya upajati vedayitam sukham va dukkam va adukkhamasukkham va tasmin pini bindati so tasmin pini bindati sade supini bindati sota vinyane pini bindati sota sampase pini bindati yam pidam sota sampasapacaya upajati vedayitam sukham va dukkam va adukkhamasukkham va tasmin pini bindati ganasmin pini bindati gande supini bindati gana vinyane pini bindati gana sampase pini bindati yam pidam gana sampasapacaya upajati vedayitam sukham va dukkam va adukkhamasukkham va tasmin pini bindati jivaya pini bindati rase supini bindati jiva vinyane pini bindati jiva sampase pini bindati yam pidam jiva sampasapacaya upajati vedayitam sukham va dukkam va adukkhamasukkham va tasmin pini bindati kayasmin pini bindati potabe supini bindati kaya vinyane pini bindati kaya sampase pini bindati yam pidam kaya sampasapacaya upajati vedayitam sukham va dukkam va adukkhamasukkham va tasmin pini bindati manasmin pini bindati dhamme supini bindati mano vinyane pini bindati mano sampase pini bindati yam pidam mano sampasapacaya upajati vedayitam sukham va dukkam va adukkhamasukkham va tasmin pini bindati nibindam virajati viraga vimuchyati vimutasmin vimutam nittinyana otikina jati usitam brahmachariyam katam karaniyam naparam itatayati pajanati
idamawo cha bhagawa
Atamanate bhikkhu bhagavato bhasitam abhinandrum imasamim cha panaveya karanasamim panyamane tassa bhikkhu sahasa sa anupadaya asaveti cittani vimuchin suti adita pariyaya suttam
And this being full moon, on these full moon nights and new moon nights, there's the opportunity for members of the lay community, members of the lay residents, lay support team, people wishing to formally request the 3 refuges and 8 precepts. There's this opportunity now, and so people living here right now are living on these precepts anyway. But it's a good thing to reaffirm. In this ceremony, it can be if used skillfully, can be very helpful. People joining us just for the evening. There's also, maybe you wish to determine this just for the evening. Those people who wish to do that, we traditionally begin with 3 bows, if that feels comfortable, and then on page 131 in the dark brown volume, it's requesting the 3 refuges and 8 precepts, and the form that we're using, because it offers here, as you'll see, three different forms. We use for a group from a monk. So it's the first one, Mayang Bante, and then it follows on after that, turning the page. So. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Buddhaṃ saraṇaṃ gacchāmi. Dhammaṃ saraṇaṃ gacchāmi. Saṅghāṃ saraṇaṃ gacchāmi. Dutiyampi Buddhaṃ saraṇaṃ gacchāmi. Dutiyampi Dhammaṃ saraṇaṃ gacchāmi. Dutiyampi Saṅghāṃ saraṇaṃ gacchāmi. Tatiyampi Buddhaṃ saraṇaṃ gacchāmi. Tatiyampi Dhammaṃ saraṇaṃ gacchāmi. Tatiyampi Saṅghāṃ saraṇaṃ gacchāmi. Tisarana gamanaṃ nittitaṃ. Panatipata Veramani Sikkhapadang Samadhiyami. I undertake the precept to refrain from taking the life of any living creature. Adinna dana veramani sikkhapadang samadhiyami. I undertake the precept to refrain from taking that which is not given. Brahmacharya veramani sikkhapadang samadhiyami. I undertake the precept to refrain from any intentional sexual activity. Musavada veramani sikkhapadang samadhiyami. I undertake the precept to refrain from lying. Sura meraya majapamadatana veramani sikkhapadang samadhiyami. I undertake the precept to refrain from consuming intoxicating drink and drugs which lead to carelessness. Vikala bhojana veramani sikkhapadang samadhiyami. I undertake the precept to refrain from eating at inappropriate times. Nachagita vadita visuka dasana mala ganda vilepana dharana mandana vibhusanatana veramani sikkhapadang samadhiyami. I undertake the precept to refrain from entertainment, beautification, and adornment. Ucha sayana maha sayana veramani sikkhapadang samadhiyami. I undertake the precept to refrain from lying on a high or luxurious sleeping place. Imani atta sikkhapadani samadhiyami. Yemani atta sikkhapadani silena sugatinyanti silena bhoga sampada silena nibbuttinyanti tasma silang visotaye.
Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Buddhang Dhammang Sanghang Namasami. Okay, so very welcome to this evening meditation session and chanting, and also some reflections on the Dhamma, on the practice of Dhamma. So we're currently in a retreat mode here at the monastery, where many of the monastics are in solitary retreat, and many of us have a lot of time for formal practice. And this morning we had the recitation of the rules, and during that session Ajahn himself also gave a short vada or instruction, talking about the importance, among else, about the importance of the practice of chanting, and how that can really be developed and used very skillfully during, especially maybe retreat, not especially, but during retreat time. And especially during solitary retreat time, it can be very, very useful practice to incorporate or to make a big part of one's bhavana or development meditation. And also today, just before we came into the hall, we had a practice session of chanting with some of the people staying here at the monastery. And that was very nice to hear the request for the precepts and the refuges and so on. It seems like the practice worked well. So I thought I would try to offer some reflections and from my own experience, and also I guess what I've been taught or I've learned about the practice of chanting, how that can be utilized to a great extent, I would say. It's something, at least in my view, that can really be developed, improved, and maybe widened a lot, and a practice that might be a bit underused, or that we're not using to its full potential. So hopefully some of the things I will try to share this evening will be useful and can be incorporated, or at least give it a try, see if it works. So first of all, just like we did this evening, it's very common that chanting is used as a preliminary to meditation. So this evening we chanted the fire sermon. It's one of the early discourses of the Buddha. And as you probably notice, one of the first things that happens is that it sets the atmosphere of the place, and it really takes us towards the spiritual. So we might have come from a busy day, we had a lot of responsibilities, a lot of things going on, and still a lot of those things might be spinning around in the mind, and it might be difficult to go from that just directly to focus on a subtle object like the breath. And then it can be a very helpful thing to start off with chanting practice. And this can really help to calm the mind and to switch the mind from maybe a more engaged mode or
engaged in various responsibilities, to a spiritual mode where we reflect on, or we use the words of the Buddha to direct the mind towards these values and these reflections. And it can also be a gathering point, that now we show that everybody who is gathered here, when we chant together, that we set the same intention. Everybody has the same kind of thoughts, we hear the same words being spoken, and we enter into the same mode. So it sets the group dynamic to a certain mode, that we all enter this mode of thinking, of these kind of reflections. So we can feel a sense of unity around that, and that we know that everybody in this room is now considering the same words, or now on the same page, maybe even in the chanting book, and to feel a sense of community around it. That's also one thing when we practice chanting together, and we learn the same chanting, we do the same chanting together, and then we also feel that we do the practice together, we support each other, and that we have the same, at least to some extent, the same values, same aims, we're trying to develop the same qualities. This can be, to me at least, can be very inspiring actually, just to have a group of people chanting very profound words or very beautiful words. So the fire sermon can be very, very profound sutta with very deep implications, and other suttas, maybe like the Metta Sutta, Buddha's words on love and kindness. It can be very inspiring to hear just that so many people reciting this together, having the same thoughts, that so many people actually think like this, or trying to steer their minds in this direction. So coming together around this, that can create a great group harmony, I think. Doing something together, also trying to harmonize the voices, to follow the lead voice, and trying to, maybe somebody's trying to lead and others follow, at other times we follow and somebody else leads. So we find a way of working together, and also to listen to each other. So we listen to the other voices of the people in the group and try to set the same pitch, the same tone, and try to adjust our volume so we don't dominate too much, and so on. So to listen to others and adapt to others and working together, all these aspects can also be incorporated in the practice of chanting. So it can create a sense of community, doing something beautiful together. Also, of course, now, for example, when we chanted the fire sermon, it connects us to a wider group or a wider community, down all the way down to the Buddha. So this was one of the sermons he spoke to, I believe it was to 1,000 former fire worshipping ascetics, who at the end of the sutta, all of them becomes enlightened. So there's quite a background story to this sutta, and it shows really the depth of it and the potential of those words. So chanting can also connect us to the tradition, and if one reflects on this fact, then that can also bring up a lot of faith and a lot of inspiration. And even, it might not be exactly, but very, very close at least, that this could be the very words of the Buddha himself. And just reciting those same words can create a connection, a historical connection, and also a connection to maybe to the Dhamma, the teachings, and all those who have passed before us, or after the Buddha up to our time. This very text has been chanted by many, many generations, and people who have striven in their spiritual practices, and also probably many who have had quite a bit of success in their practice and been able to use this to great benefit. Another very important aspect to the practice of chanting is of course the development of certain qualities. So in the Buddhist path we try to develop the wholesome and let go or abandon the unwholesome in order to purify, develop the mind so that it can get closer and closer to the awakening or liberation. In one of the recent sutta classes, we have study classes here at the monastery, we talked about what's called the Bodhipakya Dhammas, or the qualities that are conducive or leading towards enlightenment or awakening. And they are 7 sets of different lists of qualities, that these qualities are what will lead or condition the awakening experience. So to develop these to higher and higher degrees. And the most famous probably of these lists is the Eightfold Noble Path, which probably most of you know what those factors are. And my point being that many or most, or maybe even all of those 37 factors can be developed or enhanced through the practice of chanting. So in various ways we can use chanting to develop our minds, purify our minds. So the first example I already talked about, so we have many different metta chants, or loving kindness chants that we do regularly. So the Metta Sutta, for example, the reflections on universal well-being. And this is naturally part of the Metta Bhavana, so development of friendliness, kindness, loving kindness. So by using these chants and by reflecting on the words in the chants, we can start to arise the feeling of metta in our hearts. So that's a little bit of a skill there as well, that when we do the chanting, how do we actually make that into a mind state? So how do we draw the words into the heart and make that how we feel, or our emotional state? Try to arise and create not only the words but actually the feeling and the state of metta. So this is something we really can develop. So while we chant, how do we actually feel what we chant? And that's something we can practice with and develop and cultivate. And it's a skill. Other examples are, as we had with the fire sermon, there's a lot of wisdom practices, wisdom teachings in that sutta. So it's contemplating the characteristic of dukkha, as it says in the introduction to the chant, and how if we cling to various aspects of experience, this creates us kind of a burning there, clinging to what's impermanent and not reliable. It goes on to show that how we also can view things in order to reach a sense of nibbida or disenchantment, or how we get free of that clinging, how we drop that clinging. So the very words also includes instructions on how we can view phenomena in order to let go of clinging. So if we reflect on the words as we do the chanting, and if we prepare maybe beforehand by reflecting on what these words actually are pointing at, or what they're trying to say, then while we're chanting, that can also induce that kind of, or it can lead the mind in that direction. So many of our chants in the chanting book are wisdom reflections. We have also, for example, the 5 subjects for frequent recollection, which talks about aging, sickness, death, impermanence, being separated from what we love, and also about karma, how karma affects us in various ways. And they're quite short sentences, or quite short reflections. But to me they can be developed a lot. So by either prior or after or during we chant, we can reflect on the meaning of these sentences and how does this affect my situation or myself. Or have I had a recent experience of this? Maybe I've had a sickness, or somebody close to us has passed away, or maybe we're just feeling the change of aging, how that affects our bodies. So always trying to relate it back to experience, to things that are relevant to us, and things that have meaning for us, because then these chants also take on meaning, and then they have a much stronger effect, much stronger than just saying a few words and then letting that go, but always trying to connect it to relevant events in one's own situation and one's own experience. What does this mean for us? So with those facts, how should we act, or what is appropriate? What is an appropriate response towards that? So I think there's a great skill to be developed there, so how to use these chants, how to use these reflections for the most benefit, or how can we use them so they actually have an effect on our minds. And not just reciting the words. And then when we connect these words with more and more meaning, more and more reflections over time, more and more associations, then as we chant that, then those things tend to arise in the mind and become more and more powerful and has a greater effect. So we try to connect other teachings, other experiences to those words in order to make them more meaningful and have a greater power. Another way to use chanting is to develop sati and samadhi. So it's mindfulness and concentration or collectedness or focus. So mindfulness is quality, or parts of that quality is to be able to keep something in mind and to recollect things. And obviously if we memorize chanting, we need to be able to recollect them, keep with the words, keep with the chanting, keep focused. And remember maybe all these different associations to the words. So we train our memory. And also by staying with a chant for a longer time, the mind starts to collect around that very activity of chanting. So one common practice in monastic life is to learn to recite the disciplinary rules or the patimokkha rules, to memorize that. And that takes about 40 to 50 minutes to recite the whole set of rules. And it takes quite a lot of focus in order to stay with a recitation for that long. And then when you do so, you can definitely feel a difference in focus of the mind, comparing when you start, before you start, and then after you finish. That the mind has really become more focused, more clear, by just staying with the words. This can be a somewhat easier way to develop concentration compared to, for example, using the breath. It can be quite easy to get distracted, to start thinking, to lose one's focus. With chanting it can be easier because you notice very quickly if you're not chanting anymore, or if you lose track of what you're saying, or maybe if you're chanting in a group, you will notice that you're chanting something completely different from the rest of the group. So it can be a very good way to either to initially develop concentration and then move on to maybe breath meditation or other more subtle objects, or just as a practice in itself. And many people use this in conjunction or together with walking meditation. That can also be very, very good practice. We walk back and forth and then do chanting at the same time, or memorizing texts at the same time. That can help focus the mind during walking meditation, which otherwise it can be a little bit easier also to get distracted when walking, if there's things happening around you, or there's birds, or there's a car coming, or whatever happening. But if you have the aid of a chant, that can help the mind keep focused, keep collected. At the same time, that can be a very energizing practice. So walking obviously can be energizing, and then also the chant itself, when one puts energy into the chant, that can be brightening to the mind, energizing. So if the mind is a bit dull or tired, this can be a good way to wake up, get energy. And then when the mind is more energized, then maybe go back to sitting meditation again. Another aspect to the chants we do is a more devotional aspect, where we recollect the Buddha Dhamma Sangha, which we just do very frequently. And this also, as we talked about before, can connect us to the tradition in a way that obviously when the words we recite, but also these chants in themselves are very traditional, and people, great teachers in the past, like Ajahn Chah, very likely has chanted this many, many times. And it can also arise a sense of faith, sense of inspiration, motivation, if we learn how to reflect when we chant about the qualities of the Buddha. If we at the same time can recollect stories from the Buddha or his teachings, what kind of being that must have been, maybe respect, gratitude, appreciation, all those qualities can arise when we learn to recollect the Buddha. So here again, not just to recite the word, but to try to put meaning into it and to arise qualities of the mind, wholesome qualities of the mind. And as we learn to do this more and more in different ways, then we really develop, deepen our chanting practice. So maybe that's enough for this evening, but I hope it has been of some use and hopefully inspires to pick up or maybe develop or try to improve our chanting, and to also have a sense of appreciation for this very traditional practice. And also I think we can feel a sense of joy when we hear other people chant. That's at least my experience. And when you hear other people chanting very profound or beautiful words, it can arise a sense of joy in other people as well, and that can be an additional benefit. So hopefully that's something we can all share in and to develop together, and to really make good use of during this winter retreat. Okay, Ewa.